Okay, so you did the right compression and EQ, you followed my tips from other videos, but it still sounds a little bit confined to the center, so check this out. Hi everyone, my name is Eli, and I'm gonna show you how you can use vocal doublers to make things sound, a lot better and smoother in your mix. And it's gonna be a little bit of a unique way to use them. And by that, I don't mean it's some special crazy trick, it's actually super simple. Oh, and this is actually gonna work with any kind of stem that you really wanna make sound more smooth. Like I've used this on guitars before, and even basses sometimes, and it can be a really cool thing to add. But just watch this right here. Even with some reverb and other ambient plugins, it still sounds a little bit too confined to the center.
Paralyzed, we fall in love, but it wasn't enough.
So it definitely sounds really awesome, and you can hear those delays / echoes really kicking in. But for some reason, I just felt like the vocal didn't sound soft enough, if that makes sense. It didn't sound smooth, and it sounded a little bit too confined to the center. So I put on this plugin right here. So I actually started with this preset right here, and I thought it sounded absolutely amazing. And here's kind of the trick that I'm talking about. You can just put a little bit of the double tracking in, where it's like, maybe you put it before a compressor. That's what I did here. Crazy, right? But I thought it sounded super awesome, because what happens if you have like look, this is what happens when you put on the full doubler. It sounds a little bit too wide, and it has these kind of phasing issues.
We fall in love, but it wasn't enough.
But you don't actually have to do all of that. You can just use this mix knob to put in a little bit of that kind of width, and that way it gets the vocal a little bit less confined to the center and just spreads it out just a little bit. So listen to what happens when I just put in the just a little bit. It's around a quarter mix level, and I'm gonna start with it off and then turn it on.
Paralyzed, we fall in love, but it wasn't enough. My baby ran from me.
And at some points, it can sound a little bit too phasey, and that's why you should consider automating the double tracking. This can create a really, really cool effect, where basically throughout the track, like maybe some words, some sustained notes, you kind of automate it to just make it this like crazy, wide, even intentionally phasey sound. But by automating this thing throughout, it can really add such a nice dynamic flowiness to whatever you're trying to make sound good. In this case, the vocals. So check this out. I'm just gonna use my mouse to slide it up as it's happening real time.
Then I lost control. See, when there's nothing to soothe you, no nothing to keep me down, and I'm not in my body no more. It's hard to love.
If you thought that was cool, leave a like. So that sounded super cool, but you might be asking, how does it work and how can I do it myself? Well, honestly, this thing right here, it looks super complicated, but it's not that complicated. Basically, what all it's doing is kind of like delaying one side, and that kind of makes this perceived spatial separation. Now, learning on just an echoer is probably a lot easier. And with this echo right here, I used a very similar type of effect, where this is actually also acting as a double. And this one I kept very, very subtle as well. And you see right here, basically it's just saying there's gonna be a 33 millisecond difference between the source audio and the echo. So again, I started with this preset because this is a really good starting point, and then I kind of just dialed in the mix a little bit and the time and whatnot. There's all these different modes on how you actually want the echo to interact with the original one, but in this case, I chose ping pong. Now, another reason to use doubling plugins is actually to take out some of the harshness that can be caused just from like S sounds, and even just kind of like excessive fuzzy brightness. But it's not like it's not like an EQ problem. It's just you kind of want it to sound a little bit more smooth and subdued in a way. That's where these doublers can really, really make a difference. So check this out. Without the doubling, it's just gonna sound, even with the reverb, a little bit too kind of harsh in a way.
See, when there's nothing to soothe you, no nothing to keep me down.
And you definitely heard that with like the S sounds and the breaths, but even with the D sound, it just made it sound like a little bit too kind of harsh. But these doubler plugins can really like subdue that harshness in a way that also just makes it sound much more smooth in general.
See, when there's nothing to soothe you, no nothing to keep me down.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly show you one more context where you can use this right now on whatever kind of stem is just a little bit too harsh for your mix. Okay, so listen to this guitar right here. It sounds great so far, but I thought it sounded just a little bit too kind of narrowly focused. But now look at what happens when I turn on this doubler plugin. And this is actually another case where I just started with a preset and modified it just a little bit. And this is what that sounds like off and on. So as you could hear, it sounds a lot smoother. And yes, you can do this with reverb. And oftentimes I use reverbs as well, like with the vocals. But this is a great way to just start out and kind of like actualize that idea you have on how you want it to sound. This really goes to show how you can do so much with just the doublers. They can really make things sound much less harsh and more kind of spread out in a way that often reverbs can't. And that's what I want you guys to keep in mind here. Use doublers with the full mix sometimes if you want it to be like this super wide sound. And of course, during like choruses and whatnot, do your thing. But when it's like, you just need it a little bit, don't be afraid to just engage that little bit of the mix knob for a doubler and just see how it sounds and play with it. But there's actually one thing you need to know how to do before you even get into doubling and whatnot, and that's using compression in the right way. So I suggest you click on this video to learn about that. But for now, thanks for watching and have a great day.